things that it records.
Is this data typically reliable on by accident reconstruction?
100%. We use this all the time. It was brand new technology in the early 2000s when it started, and then it's just developed over the years.
You also testified earlier that you have experience in retrieving and analyzing this data, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
At what intervals does an airbag control module record, please?
It's going to vary on manufacturers. Many of them are tenth of a second. Every tenth of a second it's clearing the systems. Some are half a second. Every half a second it's clearing the systems. Some are very rudimentary. About every second it's querying the systems. But it's constantly querying systems. And then if it doesn't need the data, nothing's going on, it just kind of washes it out. It just rinse and repeat, fights over itself. When an event occurs, such as, hey, there's a crash occurring, it's detecting the accelerometers in the vehicle, the crash and attenuator, the different systems that are throughout the vehicle starts detecting a crash. Then it starts making, hey, I think we need to deploy airbags or deploy supplemental restraint systems, the seatbelt retentioners. Then it'll start, it'll save that data that's continually going through. So it's going to save 5 seconds of that data, basically what it does.
About 5 seconds.
Yes, sir.
How many event collisions could typically be recorded on these devices?
Varying devices. Toyota typically three events. Honda a couple events. It just depends. Some will record just one event. Some will record 3 events.
It's a low number though?
Yes. So no more than, I'm not familiar with systems that record more than 3 events. So an event being an airbag event or supplemental restraint systems kicked in, retention.
What kind of events cause the ACM to stop recording, to lock in?
Once, if the ACM, the airbag control module, makes a decision, hey, I need to deploy airbags, this is going to hurt. This is a significant enough impact where my occupant is probably going to get hurt if I don't deploy airbags. That's going to lock it in. Sometimes some manufacturers will have a near event, an almost event, a wake-up event, such as the impact is kind of significant, but I think he's wearing a seatbelt. I think we're going to be okay. It's not that bad. So it's not going to deploy airbags. It'll record that kind of event, which we call a near event or a near miss or an almost event, a wake-up event. But typically when an airbag is deployed, it'll record that data and store that. Basically, just store that data, whatever the data set's in there, from all the different parameters, the vehicle speed, wheel sensor, wheel speeds, seat belts, brakes, all that stays stored in a locked device folder, I guess.
Investigator Warren, is the timing of the events recorded?
The timing within the events from time 0 to 5 seconds out is recorded. Time 0 with the ACMs is typically understood as the event that says it's time to deploy the airbags. That's typically associated with your impact. Once the impact occurs, okay, we're deploying airbags. And then there's several milliseconds before and after that it may still record, just depending on what it's recording. But time 0 is typically your airbag deployment event, which is where it's typically associated with your impact.
Well, how do you determine whether the event that has been reported by that ACM is in fact a crash that occurred at your investigating?
Okay, this is kind of the tricky part that you have to pay attention to as an investigator. The crash data, the ACM doesn't care what date and time it is, which is probably a good thing, I guess, because people's clock, if you don't change your clock when it's time to fall back and spring ahead and whatever. but it actually bases on the ignition cycles. So anytime you turn your car on, it's an ignition cycle. Anytime you turn the ignition over, it's an ignition cycle. And so what the airbag control module does to separate the events out is it bases everything on the ignition cycle. So in an instance would be, say I'm looking at a report and I have an airbag deployment event, a crash, and it occurred at ignition cycle 1,500. And then I go to download that report. If it's at ignition cycle 1,501 or 1,502, that tells me just recently this crash occurred. This crash just occurred. The second ignition cycle would be maybe the tow truck driver turning it on to tow it up on the rollback. But anytime the key is turned over, that creates what we call an ignition cycle. And so if I look at events, when the event occurred, at what ignition cycle, it gives you a numerical from the time it leaves the factory and you first turn it on, it records each ignition cycle. And then the data set will also tell you what ignition cycle you did the download. When did you download this data? And if it's with a 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, whatever ignition cycles, it's a pretty good bet you're recovering the actual crash that you're looking at. If there's multiple ignition cycles in between, 1,000, 100, several hundred, whatever, that's indicative that the ignition cycle, that the crash that's recorded is not related to the crash that you're looking at.
I know what I'm about to ask you is an impossible question, but just is a rough estimate, how many ignition cycles do you see in a year?
One rule of thumb I like to use is about 1,000 a year. So if you think about it, when you get up, go to work in the morning, you turn your car on, drive to work, park the car at work, get back in the car, turn it on again, drive home, that's 2 ignition cycles. Then you go out to eat, go get something to eat, come back home, that's 4 ignition cycles. The average person, and it's going to vary. People who run errands, you got kids, you got to take them here and there. There's probably 20 of them. Our patrol cars probably see dozens in a day. It just depends. It could be just a handful of 4 or 5 ignition cycles a day. It could be 20 a day. But a nice little estimate, depending on for the average person, is about 1,000 a year, ignition cycles a year. And that's just, it varies greatly on drivers.
Were you present, sir, when Dr. McGinty's ACM data was retrieved?
I was, yes, sir. Myself and another investigator, we actually performed the download.
Was the retrieval done in a standard, reliable manner?
It is, yes, sir.
It was. Was it done in a manner that preserved the data?
It was.
Were you able to process and review that data?
I was, yes, sir.
And I'm going to hand you a 19-page document that's bound with the same. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir. This is a printout of what we call the Bosch CDR crash data retrieval system.
And what is, can you tell which vehicle that was?
Based on the VIN, it starts with the one end. That tells me it's going to be a Nissan. And so I know for this crash, we have the Nissan Titan, and the other vehicle, the Dodge Caravan.
So this is the data from Dr. McGinty's vehicle?
That's correct.
Your Honor, the state requests that this be entered as exhibit number 62. So, okay. Thank you, sir. Did Dr. McGinty's ACM report an accident, sir?
Yes, sir, it did.
Were you able to determine whether the accident was the crash with the defendant November 5th, 2003 crash?
I was able to make determinations that there were actually 2 events that were recorded on it. However, neither event was associated with this crash, and that was based on the ignition cycles. I'd have to look at it. If I'm able to refer to a live copy of it.
But no matter what, the data that is recorded and that has been presented as an exhibit is not related to this crash, is that correct?
That's correct. There are 2 events, about 1,500,000 ignition cycles away from the time that we downloaded it. I want to say maybe we downloaded it at 13,000. There's one at 10,000. I can't remember. I can look at the numbers. There's a large number of ignition cycles in between the crash that we were investigating and when we downloaded when this would have occurred.
And just the roughest of guess is about 1,000 ignition cycles per
I
year.
think it's 1,000.
Around 1,000.
I think so, yes, sir.
So that, whatever incidents were recorded, that could have been a year, multiple years ago.
Could have. And again, depends on the driver, how often they turn it on.
So why might Dr. McGinty's ACM not have recorded this particular crash?
So very simple, again, the ACM, the airbag control module, is all about protecting the occupant. The ACM is detecting parameters such as the speed, the deceleration rate, if it's detecting impacts. This is occurring over milliseconds, and these computers are reading this stuff very fast. And over milliseconds, it's detecting what we call delta V, or change in velocity. The harder the stop, the more abrupt the stop is, the harder it hits, is what we call a change in the delta V, or the change in velocity. The harder that is, the more it's going to hurt. You know, if you ever played football, you know, those hits kind of hurt because you're right there. But what the computer is doing is it's calculating how hard that hit is, and if it's not a hard hit, it's okay. Well, yeah, there's something going on, but it's not enough for us to deploy airbags. The occupant's wearing a seatbelt, whatever, he's going to be fine. So it's not going to deploy airbags, so it's not going to record an event. Some instances it might do a near event, but with the case of looking at the evidence from the vehicles themselves, with the Nissan, the impact damage was very minor, relatively speaking. It was not enough to cause injury to the occupant or the driver of that vehicle, because it was relatively minor as far as the injury risk to the driver. They said, okay, I don't need to deploy airbags, so there was no event, so there's nothing to record.
Were you present, sir, when the ACM data was extracted from the defendant's van?
I was, yes, sir.
Was that done in a safe, true, reliable manner?
It was, yes, sir.
And was it done in a fashion that would preserve the information recorded?
That's good. It did.
I'm going to pass you a 36-page bound document bound by a state police.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what that is?
Yes, sir. This is actually the CDR crash data report from the Chrysler and the Dodge.
Okay, so this is the defendant's ACM crash data report.
That's correct.
Your Honor, I ask that this be marked as exhibit number 64, please. Got 63. 63. I apologize. Thank you. Impact event that would have been in danger, that could have potentially endangered the occupant's safety, that was captured on this.
That would be a correct way to say that, yes, sir.
Were you able to determine whether the November 25th, 2023 crash was the crash captured by the ACM?
I was, yes, sir.
How were you able to do that?
Again, with the ignition cycles on this one, the download ignition cycle was one ignition cycle away from the crash event that it recorded, which means that the next time the key was turned over was by us when we were doing the ignition download, or when we were doing the ACM download. For us to do the download that we're doing from the OBD port, where you plug in to get your ignitions done, plug in that, you have to turn the key over. That ignition cycle is what it recorded. They said, hey, okay, this being downloaded is recorded at whichever numerical value it was +1 from the ignition cycle when the crash data was recorded.
I'd like to discuss the timing captured by the ACM. So there's 0. What would 0 be on the ACM, on the clock, on the timing report, sir? Can you explain that?
No, you're good. And it's complicated because you have to think backwards and go backwards. So it confuses us when we're doing it. So we do this all the time. So we have to stop and think about it ourselves. But time 0 is simply, that's when we're popping the airbag. Typically, that's associated with the impact. what can happen in that 5-second period. And 5 seconds is standard what automobiles record. EDRs, or heavy vehicle EDRs, such as from tractor trailers, they'll record 60 seconds of parameter, but for cars, it's 5 seconds, automobiles. And during that 5 seconds, there could be multiple impacts, or there could be multiple events that are going on in that 5-second period. But there'll be the one impact, the one event that says, okay, this is the bad part, I'm popping the airbags, and that lines up with what we would recognize as the impact of the wall, of the building and the pedestrians.
And so events that occur are going in reverse from zero. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So at time zero would be the airbag deployment, and in this case lines up with within milliseconds of the actual impacts with the wall and the pedestrian, the victims in this case, and then it goes 5 seconds backwards, recording data.
Does that look like positive time or negative time? Well, is it like -1, -2?
Yes, it'll say minus, it'll give you the -5 seconds to -4 seconds, and actually, I think on this one is every 10th of a second.
That movement would be recorded by these devices.
Can you explain your question?
Sure. Are there devices in the car that can tell if it's rocking or anything?
Oh, okay, yes, sir. So like for stability control and rollover, this, for the van, is detecting things such as rollover detection, because vans and SUVs can roll over. If you remember back in the 90s, we had the scare with the Ford Explorers that were rolling over constantly, and long story short, it turned out to be underinflated tires, and people drive around with underinflated tires and not understanding the problem with high center of gravity vehicle. Sorry, we got a rabbit hole real quick. But rollover sensors are put in the vehicles to help with the traction control, and so it'll detect things like that, rollovers, or where the axis of the vehicle starts to roll or slide sideways or move sideways. It can detect things like that.
Zero would have been the impact of the building.
Right, yes, sir.
Does the data reflect that there were other bumps, impact events, bumps, however you want to phrase it? Jocelyn?
Yes.
Okay. What does the data say?
So, if I'm able to refer to mine, that's fair. There's multiple things that are.
Can you please give us
Yes,
this one?
yes.
For you. Yes, sir, please continue.
Okay. Yes, sir. There's just, again, this is a 36-page document that I do not have memorized.
Understood.
So I've got things such as speed, the throttle position of the vehicle, the braking application, if there's any. All this stuff is reported throughout, and you can just go through the reports. It's complicated a little bit, but it's not too hard to explain what you're looking for in particular.
With this, was there a rocking event that was reported prior to zero crash?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And based off of your review of the evidence, is there any kind of yaw that was also reported? Is there any kind of information that would go to be analogous to that with the ACM?
Yes, sir. So on page 12 of this report, there's a chart that has rollover crash pulse, and it has at time zero, which is typically our airbag deployment, we believe in this case also impact with the building and the victims that were involved with this. At 1200 milliseconds before the impact, there's a large spike in the rollover crash pulse that indicates, hey, something's rocking the vehicle. It's 1200 milliseconds, between 900 and 1200 milliseconds before this impact. Millisecond is 1,000th of a second, so it's basically 1.2 seconds prior to impact with the wall. It's detecting some events with a rollover, with a rocking, I guess you'd say. Looking at video evidence, that seems to line up with about the time when the vehicle is starting to slide sideways and rocks up a little bit.
Can this device record whether there was a passenger in the passenger seat?
Some do. This does tell you, in this particular case, on the first bit of pages, it tells you the passenger, whether it detects the size of an occupant. The reason they do that, if there's a child in the front seat, they don't want to deploy an airbag in front of a small child because that can actually cause more injury. So they'll have a thing that detects the weight of the front seat passenger.
In this particular case, sir, was the weight that would be analogous to a passenger detected in the passenger seat?
Right. So on page, wrong week was, so I remember this time. On page 8, there's a line that says, outboard front passenger, this is not present, basically just indicating it doesn't detect the passenger in the front.
What does the data show about the accelerator pedal?
So starting at 5 seconds out, this is on page 19 of this report. There's a chart that gives you vehicle speeds as well as accelerator pedal position. At 5 seconds out, it's showing 55% throttle. Going to about 4 seconds, it's 58% throttle, which is halfway down, more than halfway down. Kind of a significant amount. At 3 seconds, we're in the 60% range. By 2 seconds, we're at 70% throttle. And anonymously, for whatever reason, at 1 second prior to the impact and all the way to impact, the throttle position is showing 100% throttle position or accelerator position when the pedal is depressed 100% of the way for 1 second to the point of impact. Sure.
Can you explain what happened in the last handful of seconds before that final impact of the jury, just in English? What does that mean to you, sir?
I don't know why, but for whatever reason, the driver of this vehicle was flooring it right before he hit the building. Just didn't quite make sense. He's accelerating heavily. The engine RPM is showing at 5 seconds before at 4,500 RPM, which is significant for the minivan. You're not running 4,500 RPM. It goes all the way up to in the 5,000 range. The vehicle is speeding up to 5 seconds to impact and continues to speed up into the building. It's not something that makes a lot of sense when you look at what's happening with the crash as far as why would someone speed up and continue to speed up into the building. At about 1.2 seconds, 1.5 seconds, somewhere in there is where the contact with the van and the truck occurs. And then post that contact, instead of any kind of braking action, there's 100% throttle. And that part doesn't make a lot of sense.
What's a tachometer?
The tachometer, just basically just a device on your dash tells you the RPMs and the engine revolutions per minute of your engine. Typically, normal driving, you're seeing your tachometer moving 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, and then it'll shift to the next gear, and you'll see that tachometer go. Most of your passenger vehicles, red line, basically maximum revolutions is going to be around 6,000 RPMs for most of your passenger vehicles, depending on the motors. Little Honda VTECs like 8,000 to 9,000 RPMs. My Suburban likes 3,000, whatever. But it's, you're typically not seeing 4,000 or 5,000 RPMs in your normal drive.
No, may I have space? Sorry. You're going to pass your photograph.
Yes, sir.
You recognize that photograph, sir?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is that photograph of?
That is a photograph of the dashboard of the van, the defendant's van.
Your Honor, statement was that this photograph of the defendant's dashboard be entered as exhibit 64. gonna ask you to turn around just a second, sir. I'm just
Yes, sir.
trying to get connected. There we go. Just working through, asking citizens, trying to get you.
I need reminders of who I am. So.
If you don't mind, turn around, please.
Yes,
Is that the photo I just showed you?
it is. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the defendant's dashboard, is that correct?
That is correct.
And I know everybody's familiar, but what are those two gauges, please?
Those two gauges, the gauge you see on the left is the gauge, the RPM gauge, the tachometer, you commonly recognize. And the gauge on the right, the large gauge on the right, is the speedometer.
What does the defendant's tachometer reflect as far as RPMs?
There in the photograph, the tachometer shows above 5,000, about 5,400 RPM. Seeing the tachometer and the speedometer locked in place post a crash doesn't happen all the time. It's also not the most reliable piece of evidence. We'll take note of it. I've worked many fatality crashes or serious crashes where the tachometers and speedometers have locked in place. A lot of times they are accurate. When everything shuts off, the system shuts off, they stay where they're at. But it's not my only reliable source of information. In fact, I don't rely on that as part of my reconstruction, but I take note of it. In this case, it seems to line up with the data that I downloaded from the systems from the vehicle.
That's my next question. So does this photograph support what was recorded by the ACM and vice versa?
That's what it does, yes, sir.
Okay. Does the ACM also record speed, sir?
It does, yes, sir.
Okay. Was that information captured regarding the defendant's van?
It was, yes, sir.
What was the speed at the approximate time of crash? The point zero. We're right immediately before point zero.
The speed that it records at 2/10 of a second and 1/10 of a time zero was showing 62 miles an hour, 58 and 62 miles an hour, which did not line up with my video speed analysis of 52 miles an hour.
Based off of your analysis, though, of the data reflected there, at some point there was information reflected as over 50 miles an hour. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, was there any issues with, so we're red line, there's that information that's reflected. What's going on with the wheels?
So one of the other things that it does, remember, they record systems for traction control, whether you're about to lose control or not. On page 21, this answered that question for me. Why was my video speed analysis 10 miles an hour lower? I started looking through, first of all, the speed chart, and it's roughly staying around 52 miles an hour, 53 miles an hour, which is consistent with the video speed analysis. But then there's in a tenth of a second and 2/10 of a second jump to 62 miles an hour. And I used to drag race cars back in the day, just as at the track legally. It's just good. I had a pretty quick car that accelerated really quickly, 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds. Being able to accelerate 10 miles an hour in about a tenth of a second is not something a Dodge Caravan is capable of doing. So I knew the numbers were not quite right. If I go to page 21, it gives me wheel speed indicators, how many revolutions per minute each tire is going. And that tells you the story. All four wheels, let's say 5 seconds out, are within just a tenth of a revolutions per minute within each other. 350, 349, 340, 340 revolutions per minute. So that's consistent with, they're all in the same RPMs, they're all going the same speed, As the defendant picks up speed towards the crash, when he's running closer to 52 miles an hour, we're seeing wheel speeds of 580, 585, 575, 580. So they're all within, a few numbers of each other, revolutions per minute. And then there at the very end where I've got the 62 mile an hour reading, which did not make sense. I have a wheel speed on the left front tire of 948 revolutions per minute, while the rest are 563, 545, and 550. So that tells me is that wheel got airborne, and because he's at full throttle, there's no resistance for that tire. That tire is up in the air and is able to spin up. And as it spins up, then it produces the 62 mile an hour reading, which did not line up with the video analysis or did not line up with, a caravan accelerating 10 miles an hour in a tenth of a second. So that answers my question of why I was getting the anomalous high speed, was when the wheel speed would jump up because the wheel got airborne when hitting the curb. So that explained that for me.
Okay. Is this a front wheel or rear wheel drive?
It's front drive.
Okay. So do the results of the report explain the results of your analysis regarding the speed so far?
Right. Once I saw that started to make sense for my overall looking at everything, looking at the video analysis, looking at the numbers, the way the vehicles work, that make more sense.
What does the information show about braking?
That's somewhat confusing. It is and it isn't. I can understand why it might have occurred. Just prior to impact, we see on the video, you can actually see brake lights coming on about a second or less than a second before impact. And on the report on the chart on page 19, you'll see a category for brake lamp. So if you touch a brake pedal, that's enough, on most vehicles, that's enough to light up the light, but you're not actually braking. It's not providing any braking to the calipers. So this vehicle has multiple sensors. It has sensors on the wheels to determine braking force, whether braking force is occurring or not. And then it has sensors saying whether or not the lamp, brake lamp has been turned on or not. And at about 9/10 of a second prior to impact, it shows that the brake light has come on, which is consistent with what we saw in the video, but the brake itself has never come on. The brake itself has never been actually applied. So I don't know if the foot came over to try and hit the brake and just kind of rested on the brake pedal enough to light it up. I don't know. But for whatever reason, there's a light application of the brake pedal, light enough to activate the light, but not enough to actually apply braking force.
Thanks. Based off of your analysis, this data, and your analysis of the video that you reviewed, was there any meaningful attempt on the defendant's part to stop his payment?
No, sir.
Does this device also record steering input, the ACM?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. Will you tell the jury the significance of steering just as a whole?
So you're driving, you're making steering inputs, you're changing lanes, doing whatever you're doing, going around the curve. Steering input's important for the vehicles that have traction control traction controls in their vehicles. That helps the computer work out how to recover from a loss of control situation because it knows what inputs being put in by the driver, what inputs it can do with the computer to help counteract poor driving decisions or inexperienced drivers sometimes, put their kids in the cars and they don't know exactly what to do in a skid. The computer tries to help overcome that, but so because of that, it's going to record things like steering input. And by steering input, it's going to record whether it's a left-hand steering, right-hand steering, and what degrees. 90-degree steering, 45 degrees, 180, whatever. It records that in degrees.
I am publishing page 20 of the defendant's Compare back to goal module, can you tell the jury, there's a bunch of numbers on that page. What is this?
So this is is part of that 5-second pre-crash data. This is on page 20. And this is mainly for the stability control, traction control systems. And you'll see things like the yaw rate at the very end, the steering input, which is the next to the last column.
And I'll, if you're welcome to use a laser pointer, but if you would like me to do it.
I'd rather you do it.
Okay.
Yesterday was disastrous.
Okay, so this is the yaw rate right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then what was the next thing you were discussing?
The steering input in degrees.
So this column right here is the steering input.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And could you point out to the jury where the time sync is?
The very far left of the column is your time, -5 seconds, going all the way to time 0.1. Time 0 is your deployment occurrence time.
So to be abundantly clear, the final deployment to crash into the building would be in this area right here.
Yes.
Okay. 5 seconds prior is at the top of the page.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. At -5 seconds, I guess we need to do some more definition. If I'm saying negative or positive degrees, what does that mean as it relates to turn-in steering?
Well, this is what I have to refer to the report itself. So what the manufacturer will do is they'll tell you, hey, when there's a negative number, it's going to mean this. When there's a positive number, it's going to mean this. And they can vary from manufacturer. So they'll tell you in the very first couple of pages. On page 2 at the top, it tells me steering input. For the column for steering input, it says steering wheel turn counterclockwise will denote a positive sign will denote a counterclockwise turn or left turn. So if it's a positive number, it means counterclockwise or a left turn. So positive numbers to the left, a negative number would be to the right.
It's a little counterintuitive for me because I always felt like a positive is going to be to the right, but in this case, a positive number that is a left steer. A negative number is a right steer. Am I understanding correctly?
You're correct, yes, sir.
Okay. At -5 seconds, is the steering input negative or positive?
At 5 seconds is a -6 degrees, which is not much. You're not always going to see a 0. It just depends on each vehicle. It might track a little to the left, might track a little to the right. There might be a grade in the road to turn around. So, small is doesn't tell me a lot. Typically,
Not significant.
it's not very significant.
It's a slight turn to the right.
Just
Just slight.
just slight.
Okay.
And it could be just up with the horse trip. It's not going without it. I'm not able to drive the vehicle post crash all the time.
Fair enough. From -5 seconds to approximately -3 seconds, which way is the defendant turning his wheel?
Just to the right.
Just to the right. Okay. Approximately how many degrees are we seeing?
Between 6 at max, -8 degrees to and then it kind of comes down to about -8 degrees.
Not substantial.
No.
At -3 seconds before the crash, that of course triggered and preserved the data, what does the steering input demonstrate that the defendant did or was beginning to do?
It looks like based on the steering input that's put in, there's a positive number of 30 degrees, 20 degrees, and 30 degrees to the left. So suddenly about 3 seconds prior, we're starting to go to the left. So that's a full lane change that's likely starting to happen. Initiates leaving the straight position. 30 degrees, a little more significant. Now we're going to the left.
So between, just making sure I understand, looking at the chart, between about 3 seconds and -3 seconds and -2.1 seconds, that's a left steer.
That is a left steer.
Based off of your analysis of all of the data, the video, any rocket, the car, where is the closest point of impact on the timeline? I'm sorry, let me take a step back. I'll work that for you. What could have been the initial point of impact to your best estimation for Dr. McGinnis' vehicle?
Around the 1.8, -1.8. Right, somewhere in that area to 1.2, somewhere in that area is where the contact starts to occur. The site starts to occur.
So this could be, is it possible it could be a little bit higher or a little bit lower?
Yes, that's very possible.
Okay. That's it. We're just talking a range.
Right, and that's a great way to put it. Yes, sir.
Okay. What is the most extreme left input that you see up here on the chart?
On this chart, is a extreme is a 35 degrees to the left.
Okay. And I did it myself. I know, I got it. Okay. So about 35 degrees to the left, that's at the negative 2.7 mark. Does the left steering inputs around that area reflect what you saw on Dr. McGinty's dashcam video?
It does look like that.
At minus 2.6 seconds, what does it appear that the defendant begins to do?
2.6.
Yes, sir. It's right around where we're talking.
The left turn.
Okay. And at minus 0.9 seconds, what do you see reflected there at minus 0.9 seconds?
I see a maximum steering to the right.
Okay. There's some other right steering around that area as well, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What does that reflect that the defendant has done at this point, going from around the 0.26, the minus 2.6 area through about that maximum right deviation around the 0.09 mark? What's he doing?
It looks like steering to the right. Steering, what you probably should do, steering to the turn.
Okay. Okay. So, and we discussed this a little bit earlier, regaining traction, trying to correct you all. Will you remind the jury what you need to do in order to regain traction when you've gone into a little bit of a slide?
When you're going into the slide, the best thing to do is steer into that slide, steer into that skid, decelerate. Don't be hitting the gas, but decelerate. You really don't want to hit the brakes so much as you can, depending on the systems you have in your vehicle. But the biggest thing is to steer into it, to the turn, the skid basically, and that'd be the correct thing to do. He starts to do the correct thing.
Right. So based off of your review of the video and that input there, is it fair to say that he has, by steering input, attempted to correct it?
It looks like it, yes, sir.
But there's an important part, the speed.
The speed is very high. Again, we're at 52 miles an hour, and then the accelerator input all the way to impact is at 100%.
That is not good, and I'm not trying to right. That won't get it out.
That will not, no, sir. That just exacerbates it and makes it worse.
So I'm going to go back and refer to minus 0.9 seconds. That is a right-hand steer at 119 degrees. What begins to happen after minus 0.9 seconds?
For whatever reason, you start steering back towards the left into a positive steering mode, and a maximum of 36 degrees to the left, which would put the vehicle back on path towards the middle. Instead of steering out of the skid, it puts it back on path towards the building. I don't understand exactly why you would steer back towards what you're trying to avoid.
So we have a right-hand steer, then we have a left-hand steer.
That's correct.
And that left-hand steer could have taken them back into the direction of the family and the building. Is that correct?
No, unfortunately, that is correct.
Would you please tell the jury in English what the defendant does with his steering wheel throughout this 5 seconds? What does this mean?
So the first few seconds, first 2 seconds, seems to be normal steering. Either if it has a can't do the roadway, or the line's not perfect, or whatever, it appears normal. For the first couple of seconds, about 3 seconds prior to the time zero, which is the airbag deployment, moving the impact of the building, there's a sudden change to the left, which is consistent with starting to make that left lane change. And then after that, then we start seeing the steering to the right. He realizes he's in control and out of it. If he's out of control, he's trying to recover, starts to steer out of it correctly, and then half a second before he impacted the building, and explicitly turn back to the left towards the building. Is what's happening with the steering.
Accelerator fully depressed.
And the accelerator is fully depressed.
Brakes feathered a little bit, maybe.
Bumped, feathered, bumped.
I'm going to ask you a hypothetical, sir.
Yes, sir.
Taking a step back. If one driver was attempting to cut off another driver, what would that steering input look like?
Could look like that.
Is this data consistent with one driver attempting to cut off another driver?
It is consistent with that, yes, sir.
When you compare the path established with the Leica scan and everything reviewed in the video, looking at the acceleration and braking, is all of this data consistent with each other? Does it all sync up?
It does sync up, yes, sir. Once you account for the high speed with the one wheel being off the ground, absent that, everything else does sync up very well.
How do driver inputs like continued acceleration affect a vehicle that has already lost traction?
It just exasperates the situation. It keeps it, you're not going to recover by continuing to accelerate.
During your investigation, sir, were you able to determine whether Dr. McGinty appropriately applied his brakes after the crash?
Yes, sir. Based on the video, it looked like he was able to come to a stop very quickly, and stopped almost the same distance that the building was. So from the first touch on video that you see from the in-car video, to the point where he came to a stop is almost even with the point where Mr. Vega struck the building. So their distances are very similar. So he was able to bring it to a stop in the same distance, come to a complete stop within the same distance that Mr. Vega struck the building and the victims at 52 miles an hour.
The geometry shows loss of control. The data shows he didn't stop.
Right.
Leica scan helps you determine with some precision direction of travel, what's going on with the scene, correct?
Yeah, the Leica scan, all it does is record the actual evidence, saves everything as it preserves the evidence as it is, as we saw it at the time of the investigation.
Based off of your analysis, based off of your analysis, what did the defendant's vehicle do regarding his initial lane of travel immediately prior to impact with Dr. McGinty?
I cut over to the left of the car to the steering wheel. Change lanes.
When you look at the scan, the path of the vehicle, the data of the video, does it show a controlled drive or an out of control vehicle moving through an area where the pedestrians were present?
For the van, it is very much out of control.
Based on your training, experience in the field, and investigation of this crash, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as to the cause of this crash?
Yes, sir. Excessive speed and an improper lane change, a quick abrupt lane change to the left where another vehicle was, and then a loss of control, and then a failure to steer out of it and decelerate, but instead steer into it and accelerate.
Do the exhibits support your determination, sir?
They did this.
Was the defendant's driving a substantial factor in causing the death of the pedestrians?
Absolutely, it was.
Would Jonathan and Anna's deaths and Mr. Octavio being struck occurred absent the maneuver and loss of control?
That would not have happened.
Based on your reconstruction, did the defendant's driving behavior create a substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, it did.
Detective Warren, Investigator Warren, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing before I sit down.
Yes, sir.
Will you please explain to the jury what happened in English?
I just simply way too much speed on the van, accelerated, way too quickly, got too much speed for that populated area. And then this abrupt lane change where the other vehicle was, comes into them, loses control, and instead of trying to recover control, continues to accelerate, and then eventually, half a second before impact, steers back into the building. Just a reckless action that just resulted in this tragedy, unfortunately.
Thank you. Your Honor, state has two witnesses.
It's about 10:30. We usually take a mid-morning break.
You gave a lot of testimony, Investigator Warren, so I'm looking through it to make sure I don't miss any things. So you determined from looking at the CDR report from the Dodge Caravan that it's after impact, the steering showed you that Mr. Vega tried to steer to the right in the slide, or
The initial contact.
so, and that would indicate, and I think you testified that would indicate that the driver of that vehicle was trying to regain control of it briefly.
And then
Okay.
we switch back and steer to the left.
The reality is that all of this is pretty brief, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, we're talking about, we were narrowed down to 5 seconds. And you also, is that correct? 5 seconds on the CPR. You also used the words, I think you used 12 milliseconds. You used 1,200 milliseconds. Okay.
1.2 seconds.
So we're looking into a window here, real short time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But then again, there's a lot of data in that short time.
It is.
Yes. Okay. You mentioned that the light scan system has to be calibrated every year.
It's it has, it's actually, I found out it's actually, it only needs to be calibrated every 2 years. by the
Okay.
Manufacturer, but as a course of action,
Okay. Do you do that?
no, it's the Leica company does that.
Okay. Do you know when the last time it was calibrated? You testify that the point of contact, you cannot tell where the point of contact was.
I can tell the general area.
General area, yeah.
But the exact down right here on this spot, it is strictly just from the video over time and get a general area, but I wouldn't want to nail down to a specific spot.
Okay. Do you take into account debris laying in the road?
That would have been one. On the time I got involved in it, he agreed that was what I did not see.
Okay.
And I don't know if the other investigators observed that area or not.
Do you remember seeing in one of the photographs yesterday the blue painted lines?
Yes.
And did you remember that being also blue painted lines around the intersection?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember them circling what appeared to be a fog light cover?
That's very possible.
Okay, and maybe a red broken piece of plastic off one of the vehicles.
That's very possible.
Okay. And your testimony is that the yaw marks indicate that the van was out of control.
Right. When the vehicle starts sliding sideways, that's indicated that the wheels aren't tracking in the direction it's supposed to be.
Okay. So the van was out of control.
Yes, sir.
And your testimony was that the the gas pedal was at 100% prior to the impact.
Based on the report, ACM.
And you testified that that didn't make sense.
It's not something that I would think a driver would be appropriate for a driver to do this.
Okay. Would it make sense for a car to hit the gas to prevent somebody from coming over? Like Mr. McGinty did?
I don't know if you determine why. What he told me to do.
Well, did it make sense that he hit the gas?
Based on what his responsibility to him,
That,
whether it's proper response or not, it made sense. Why.
okay. So it made sense that he hit the gas.
For the reason he told me that he hit the gas.
Okay. To prevent somebody from coming over in front of him.
That wasn't the time that he referred to me.
Was it your impression that he did not want the van in front of him?
No, he did not want that in front of me.
Okay.
But it wasn't, I was looking, interview with him. I was looking for reasons that support like a road rage incident. I found reasons that support up here. That's what he described it.
Fear and anger are similar, aren't they?
That's a psychology question.
Well, that was your statement to Dr. McGinty, wasn't it?
That probably was. And like I said, he was notice.
You testified just a moment ago that you think the area of the impact, you know the area the initial impact was.
Yeah,
Was that before the vehicles came in to capture the Masonic Lodge video?
I think just as it comes on the video, I think that contact just started occurring.
On the in-car camera, you think you saw the initial impact as it was coming into view? What seems like. So you see,
I don't have a way to narrow that down to know that it's.
so if you look at the dash cam video and you see this initial impact and you see the far edge of the Masonic Lodge building, that would be before it went into the camera.
That'd be correct.
Okay. So it's based on that. That would mean that the impact was before it went into the camera. Within feet.
At 76 feet per second, 76 feet per second, and we're talking 4 or 5 feet differences.
Okay.
So very close.
Again, it's a short window that we're looking at. But if you go inside that window, we have a lot of information that is available to us. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In addition to other facts, like speed,
Right.
and observing Dr. McGinty's driving and his statements to you. So based on your testimony, it looks like what happened in the van after the contact is that Mr. Vega started losing control of the van.
Right.
And then he made it drop and steered to the right, okay, which is what you should do. Is that correct? Because if you're fishtailing, whatever your rear end is going that direction, steer the direction. So you said that was the right thing to do.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then after that, he steers to the left. To the left. Okay. You don't know why. Were you involved in decision making on whether or not to charge Dr. McGinty in this case? No. We have a moment, Your Honor. Another question I have.
Any regret? I'm sorry, regret, any regret? Yes, sir, briefly. Your Honor, can we have State's laptop, please? Investigator Warren, could I trouble you to turn around, sir? Investigator Warren, do you recognize this scene here?
Yes, sir. This is the video moments before the crash.
Can you show me where the debris is in the road that would cause the defendant to? Thank you. Investigator Warren, show me, sir, the debris in the roadway that would cause the defendant to make an invasive maneuver, sir.
I didn't know there was debris in the roadway.
Okay, thank you, sir. General Horace, could I get you to rewind about 3-4 seconds and then hit play, please?
Is yours sufficient?
That's fine, sir. Thank you. And if you don't mind watching the video,
Yes, sir.
I am asking you to identify any debris in the roadway.
I see debris.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, I no longer need the laptop, sir.
Sir, you were asked some questions about Dr. McGinty's speed.
Yes, sir.
Is accelerating from a green light by itself something that generally causes a crash?
Typically, no.
Okay. In your reconstruction, what was the specific physical event that caused the defendant to lose vehicle control?
When he made the left lane change and then switched in the left lane, made it happen.
Without the defendant's maneuver, the defendant have crashed into the building of the family. Was Dr. McGinty's acceleration standing alone enough to cause the defendant's vehicle to leave its lane of travel? Do vehicles accelerate next to each other from green lights every day
Yes.
and successfully without causing a crash?
Yes.
In accident reconstruction, is there a difference between something that is merely present at the scene and something that actually causes the crash?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. In this reconstruction, is Dr. McGinty's presence and speed merely at the scene the defendant caused the crash?
That would be correct.
Thank you, sir.
No.
State calls Mason Toomey. If I could have State's laptop, please. What was the name again? Mason Toomey. Good afternoon, sir. Well, excuse me, morning, we're still. What is your name?
Mason Toomey,
All right, could you please spell your last for me?
TWOMY.
And Mr. Toomey, are you employed?
Yes.
How are you employed?
I'm a paramedic with Hamilton County EMS
How long have you been doing that?
since 2019.
Okay.
With Hamilton County and 12 for
Okay. You said what did you do before becoming a paramedic?
I graduated.
Oh, I see. Oh, I apologize. I misheard you. What does a paramedic do?
We provide emergency medical care to people prior and then transport to the hospital from scenes of different medical emergencies.
And were you working in that role on November 25th of 2023? Okay. On that date, did you respond to a fatal wreck on Frazier?
I did.
Okay. When you got there, what did you do?
So when we arrived, the other 3 patients from the accident had already been transported by different units. So to arrive on scene there, and we regarded the care of who was claiming us to be the driver of the vehicle that they're on Frazier. Okay, there's Walnut Street Bridge.
So you said you were charged with taking care. Does that mean transporting that person as
That's
well?
correct.
Okay. Do you know who that patient was?
With those Randy Vega.
Okay. And when you transport a patient, do you make any sort of record regarding what happens on that ambulance ride?
That's correct.
When do you make that record?
Immediately, well, basically drop them off at the hospital, and then we have to leave our policy.
Okay. So this is something that you keep in the regular course of business?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you personally make the entries into that record? Okay. And did you do so in this case when you transported Mr. Vega?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you some paperwork. For 9 pages and estimated.
What is that? This is my patient care report.
And is that accurate? Mannered on that?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to direct your attention to, page 1 of your report. And is there a field on that report titled barriers to care?
Can you repeat that?
Is there a field on the, I'll take that back. I've highlighted something. You indicated that Mr. Vega had an altered mental status. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Why'd you write that?
So we made the assumption that was due to an altered mental status. We would say if anyone who's not behaving way to be considered cognition is correct. So if I were to ask you a question and you were being funny, it was completely outside of what would make sense, that would qualify or any amount of confusion or anything like that.
Do you have any specific information as to what was causing Mr. Vega's altered mental status?
Not necessarily that you. I was told he was the driver of this vehicle. I can see the damage.
Objection as to what he was told.
I would just indicate that Tennessee Rule of Evidence 8034 says statements for medical diagnosis. And that's got to go into the decisions that he makes. It's in the report, Your Honor.
Doctor driving the vehicle when he was told as far as what had happened on the scene, not any diagnosis or
Very
treatment
well.
issues.
I'm not asking you necessarily what you were told.
So the understanding I had was that at a bare minimum, he was in a vehicle that had heavy damage. And there's a lot of what we call mechanism of injury involved in that, which is just kind of the totality of the how someone needs to be injured in those things could possibly cause altered mental status. There's also other things that can cause being
On page 1, towards the bottom, you wrote that his mental status was, quote, combative and, quote, other. Did you personally see Mr. Vega being combative?
So combative in that instance, that's from a drop-down menu we're going through there, so that's not something that I wrote specifically. It's just the closest thing I had to describe as behavior. Combative would be really anything where we're trying to do something with the patient or manipulate them in a certain way. Like say, for example, for him, one thing that he did combative was we were going to start IV when he pulled his arm away, kind of all in the alternate disaster. So really anything where you're trying to do one thing and it seems like they're kind of working against you, whether willingly or not, will be considered bad.
In your report, you wrote that a barrier of care for Mr. Vega is that he was uncooperative. Why did you write that?
So that is another thing. That's one of the drop-down menus. It has several boxes that you can check for it. For us, we're filling out the report. We always check one of those boxes there just to explain why, for example, if something not done, some barrier was involved. So everything from the patient being, like say they're stuck in a car or something like that, that would be a barrier here as well. This would be on that same list. That because there were a couple of moments where when we were trying to get the patient like secured to a backboard, where we were trying to put his legs straight for his safety, and he was kind of pulling him up, things like that. So we would just be considered.
Certainly. I'm going to move along to page 2 of your report, sir. I have highlighted behind you in the abdomen, you wrote seatbelt sign pattern bruising across lower abdomen. Tell me more about what seatbelt sign pattern bruising is.
So in our field, obviously, if you have an accident or someone's seatbelted, they can get a bruise that's essentially in the shape of a seatbelt. These are always look for in our trauma assessments that people do. In this case, you have one across consistent with he did not have one across his chest that you would be able to see, not necessarily every time, but that you could see from having the shoulder belt across. And so we call those bruises seatbelt signs.
And in your experience, are those sorts of injuries consistent with somebody who has been in a crashed motor vehicle? Okay. Staying on page 2, you also wrote that Mr. Vega had some contusions to his right leg. My second question there is that consistent with somebody being in a car crash? Yes, sir.
Yeah, several things for your legs.
Okay. The last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to publish something that has already been admitted. This is Exhibit 54 for the record, and I'm going to begin at timestamp 15:52:38, and I'm going to end at 15:53:15. So I'm going to ask you to turn around and watch. Once you're done with that, I'm going to have some questions for you, okay? Do you see what that officer wearing the body cam has in their hand? I can back that up.
That would appear to be a wallet.
Okay. Who's the gentleman in the blue shirt?
The one not wearing the vest is my partner, Max Strong. I'm the one in the orange.
And the man in the jacket who's also with the gurney?
That's my Lieutenant Blake Smith from that day.
I'm going to ask you what this officer does with the wallet.
So he handed it.
Okay. At any point during your treatment of Mr. Vega, did that wallet come into your possession?
I recall that it was handed to me, I believe, by Lieutenant Smith. There's also him next to me. And then I said, we've got a countertop right next to where I sit in the back of the ambulance. And I had set it there. And then later, once we arrived at the hospital, I handed it back to the officer.
Okay. Did you have any reason to outside the wallet? That's not
There
something.
was, I believe, I don't know, a lot of times we'll have it just kind of standard course of business. They'll hand us the wallet or something under and all we need that so that we can identify them. You know, for our work, we get demographic things like their age, things that actually be important to their care. In this case, I don't recall actually going through it because I believe they focused on patient care. It wasn't super relevant. It would be stuff like that. So,
During your ride, did you notice anybody mess with it?
no.
Add anything to it?
No.
Take anything away?
No.
Your Honor, may we approach briefly?
Do you recognize this?
Specifically talking about what's underlined here, just
The
the.
report itself, is this the rest of the report that you wrote?
Yes, this is the narrative page of the reports. This would be what I actually type out.
Would you mind reading the part that I did underline, please?
All right. So for purposes of patient treatment by EMS, it was assumed to be a treating traumatic injury, and patient was treated as estimated trauma with expedited transport trauma center.
Thank you. Was it your understanding that that trauma that you were treating him for would have been this very significant car accident? Yes. I'm gonna give you this part too, real quick. Last question. In that report that you created, it doesn't mention any ingestion of alcohol by Randy Vega anywhere, does it?
Ms. Haydock asked you to read a line, and I believe it began with the phrase, "It was assumed," correct?
Yeah.
Do you always assume the worst case?
Yeah.
It takes much shorter for them to have lunch when it's here at the courthouse. If everyone will be back in an hour, would that be longer than that?
An hour's fine with the state.
We'll probably back at lunch later.
Yes, Sean.